Good morning, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Invo Insider Podcast. I also like to call it the official Red Bull Racing fan podcast. Thanks you for joining us, however you might be listening to us right now. I am your host, co-host, whatever you want to call me, Ryan Heffernon. Seated in front of me is the one and only, our El Presidente, Invo's president and COO, Jake Martin. I heard that Jake got a fresh haircut for this podcast. Is that right? Knew it was going to be on video, so...
Allegedly, potentially.
I choose to believe that that's the case. So even if you didn't, that's.
Can we just start this off with some vulnerability real quick?
Yeah.
So we came in here last week to try to figure out what this was going to look like. Check all the equipment. I know you like to double, triple check everything. So we're sitting here, and I glanced at myself in the video feed, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like it at all. I looked at that video feed and I hated it. I'm like, I've got helmet hair. I had straight up helmet hair out of a bad 80s sitcom. And so I lost about 3 pounds. I went and got my hair cut on Friday, anticipating that this episode was going to take place today. And, we've got a great guest. And I was like, I got to get ready for him. And obviously, I got to be able to keep up with you. So
yeah. Well, I know the importance of a good haircut. I don't really understand the 80s sitcom reference. It's a little before my time. I'm still more of a Seinfeld guy.
Here we go.
Now, we have a lot in store for you on today's episode. We're going to be spending most of our time with Brett Hollenbeck of Tower Community Bank. So that's an exciting interview. But first, we kind of just need to have a heart-to-heart here. Why is Invo starting a podcast, Jake?
I didn't see any relevant podcast discussing Daniel Ricciardo's legacy hoodie.
Yeah,
and so I think this would be a good platform for that.
This is a Danny Rick fan club podcast.
I'm here for it.
If you guys are
I'm
Red
here
Bull
for
fans.
it. Yeah. So if we're just going to be completely transparent, this is something that you challenged me with about 3 years ago. So as we started to see growth within the company, we started to really get plugged into the community banking space, the credit union movement space. What we saw was a lot of good opportunity to bring people together. And what I mean by that is there tends to be this mantra or this mindset of banks are in this lane and credit unions are in this lane, and somewhere in the ether are fintechs and software companies and partners, but we're all kind of running in the same direction, but we're doing this and we're not communicating. And so we started to really try to advocate for communication, for collaboration, for engagement. And as time went by, we were lucky enough to launch different things that enabled that. So we launched the Invo Insider live stream event, which we still do, although it's taken on a whole nother mission. And that monthly live stream event, was a platform for us to bring bankers into to tell the story of credit unions and banks. But what we found out was feedback from attendees were telling us, hey, we want longer form conversations. We want to hear more stories of what's going on, because my scope of view is Dallas, Texas, where my location is, and I want to know what's going on in Albany, New York. I want to know what's going on in San Francisco or Chicago, because everyone's doing something different. Why can't we learn from each other? And so we wanted to create an opportunity for longer form conversations. And so really my goal with this is bring thought leaders, bring those that are on the bleeding edge, those that are doing something that others may not be doing, or doing something that others are doing, but doing it differently and better, and then let them share their stories. I think that's kind of what our responsibility is, in addition to bringing software and bringing, revolution to customer service through our technology. It's also bringing people together to share stories.
Yeah, and it's kind of all about those real world, human stories. That's what make up community banks. That's what makes up the banking industry, no matter how much it's maybe twisted or not seen as that way. But these are, real people, real stories are what come out of not even just Invo's platform, but just everybody that would listen to this podcast, everybody that would come to an insider. They have a specific story, a specific group of people that they work with, a specific, clientele, members and customers that they're trying to serve. So I think that's awesome. Just focusing on, some of the human elements of it, like diving more kind of in depth. And I think for us too, something that's important is giving opportunities to our clients, but not just maybe focusing on the podcast that would focus on maybe bigger banks, bigger credit unions, like this sort of gigantic like conglomerates that people kind of associate with banking, and getting opportunities to hear and collaborate with the people in our space, like in our specific like niche like community. So I'm excited to see how that works. On that note, what could people expect from the podcast?
The unexpected. Yeah, my goal with this is to bring people to the table that represent institutions of all sizes. And so, we're going to try to bring people in that are at an institution that's just getting started, maybe that 50, 60, $70 million institution who's got one location, that's trying to innovate, that's trying to quote a CEO we met with recently was, how do we look and feel bigger to our customer base? Right. And so let them tell their story, and then let the executive from the institution that has 60 locations across multiple states, that's deployed video banking into multiple offices across all of those facilities. What were those outcomes? Like, how did you have a vision? How did you execute the vision? How did you buy in internally? How did you promote it externally? How did you measure success? And being able to equip them with the platform to share the story, so that those that are here that are willing to watch this or listen to this can learn, and then maybe avoid some of the pitfalls and missteps through that. So we're going to open up the conversation. We're also going to let bankers kind of show their personality a little bit. And that's what my hope is today when we talk with Brett, is that people get to know who Brett is and realize that, hey, you can bring people from other walks of life, other industries, other arenas with different types of backgrounds and experiences to push the institution forward. And so let's let this industry learn a little bit more about the people that are doing the moving and shaking.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm similar to Brett in the sense that I did not come from finance background, and I think something that's been really important to me as we've talked about doing a podcast is making it not just your run of the mill like finance podcast, but getting to have fun, get to talk about things that are relevant to our audience, because it isn't all supposed to be just a sort of like uh boring, like this sort of stuff that we would maybe associate with finance. It kind of gets a bad rap, and sometimes it's because we give ourselves a bad rap to an extent. So my promise from my edge of the desk or my side of this desk is to have fun with you guys, to give you, and I think that the goal of this podcast is to give you good content, good long form content, to go with the insider, but content that's engaging, that you want to listen to. And it's, I mean, how it's always fun getting to hear from people in your community, not just like I said, not just from sort of major players. I got a Bo Jackson book for Christmas. I'm super excited about it. It's like a biography, and in it, I saw this guy that I know through. I write some Royals blogs on the side. If you're a Royals fan out there,
Oh boy, we're gonna edit this out.
Um, no, but I'm reading this and I see the name of my editor in the book, and I'm like, this is like a mythical figure. And I get to see my like editor on there. It was such a cool experience, and even get to like text him and say, hey, that's awesome. You've read this? Do you see that you're in this book about like one of your like childhood like idols? So in the same way, like we want to hear from each other. We want to hear from the people in our community, not just from sort of maybe bigwigs or from the sort of the normal pathways that we might hear from people. But yeah, I think it's just going to be really important for us to make it fun, engaging, exciting. Where we're going next.
Yeah, this is going to be a good time. So today, I think this is the opportunity for those that have chosen to join us to hear a little bit about what the purpose of this is, and then also hear a little bit from a banker. And we'll try to keep this close and concise, and then we're going to open it up afterwards to get feedback. So we'll want to hear feedback after the podcast. Wherever you're consuming this, give us your feedback, rate it, give us feedback in the comments. And then ultimately what we want to do is help to drive your interest in finding out more about the institution, maybe about the tools that they're using. And so, in order to do that, that's where you can also come on board with us as an insider, because this podcast is something that is supported by Invo Solutions, but it stands alone in the fact that we're here to talk about things that are relevant to that tech, but also that are separate from that, right? And so if people are interested in finding out more about the technology and those strategies, seeing some of those things, having fun and coming together with their peers in a more interactive environment, then we have a live stream for that. And so, the first Wednesday of every month, we do that. And so this is an opportunity to hear the long form of it, but you can come and hit the highlights and see more of an interactive event that's hosted by a couple other individuals at Invo besides us. And we're hopeful that this will help have some interest to that as well. And we'll just kind of see where it goes from there.
We're excited to get started, and I don't want to waste too much time. You find folks aren't here to listen to me talk, so we're going to get right into the feature presentation. Brett Hollenbeck is the virtual bank director at Tower Community Bank, which might be the coolest title I've ever heard. It just looks
pretty good.
Just sounds pretty cool.
It's pretty good.
So we're going to turn it right back over to Jake, and we're going to get to hear from Brett Hollenbeck.
All right. Today on the show, we are excited to have Brett Hollenbeck, a virtual banking director from Tower Community Bank, the one and only. He's going to share with us how, as an insider to the industry, he's making a big impact in the community banking space through technology and focusing on customer service. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say. With that, Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Jake. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. We're glad you're here. I don't know how I feel about you already upstaging us with the microphone and the professional recording studio that you're calling in from, but you look fantastic.
Thank you. It's basically a closet with a really nice microphone and soundboard. It does the trick for sure.
Oh, it's doing the trick. That's for sure, man. And listen, we're super excited to have you here. It's kind of fun for me because our relationship started, about a year ago, maybe just a little bit longer than that. And it was something that I was thinking about when we were considering kicking this podcast off. Who would we want to have as our first guest? And I remember when we were talking, when you made the trip down to Springfield for the first time, just the ideas that you had, so many things that were outside of the norm for the industry, so many things that I hadn't heard really verbalized in the community banking space. And, this is a space I've been in for a long time, but I love the fresh perspectives that you were just, it was one thing after the next. And I wish I would have been writing it all down at the time, but make no mistake, Ryan's going to record everything you say today, so we don't forget any of this. I would like to start off though with just allowing you some time to tell your story, man. I mean, you're super unique in that you've got that crossover skill set of customer service and the focus on the customer, and thinking from that perspective, bringing in that from other industries, but you're not a lifelong banking individual in your skill set, which I think is what brings that unique perspective for you. So why don't you just kind of open up with unpacking a little bit about your history and how you ended up, jumping into banking? I mean, what's that all about? How did you do that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story that doesn't make any sense at all on paper, but I'm happy to share it. So I started with a company called Cintas right out of college. And actually during college, I ran out of financial aid and my advisor said, hey, you can either get a job and pay this off or you can drop out. And so I was like, hey, I'll get a job. And so I started with this company called Cintas, and upon graduation, joined their management trainee program. Yep. And I just sort of fell in love with Cintas and everything about them, and really saw myself pretty much my entire career working at and for Cintas and really rising in the ranks there. I loved everything that they did, and I still have a lot of respect for Cintas. Well, they ended up selling off the division of the company that I was a part of and divested it to a company called Access. So I went from a $4 billion company all the way down to a $50 million company at the time that we were acquired. And so it was a very different world. And to me, it was the Wild West. Cintas was very structured and rigorous. Oh, yeah. And Access was very much still like, yeah, just go ahead and do it and figure it out after. And so these were two very different environments for me to learn in. But the one thing I would say that helped me develop a lot of the skill sets that I have now is a leader that saw potential in me and welcomed me and cared for me and always encouraged me and challenged me to keep on growing and to continue evolving. And so I stayed with Access for about 7 years. And after that, I started working for a company in East Tennessee that is a regional security company as the chief operating officer. So I did a number of roles for Access in a number of states, and then moved to East Tennessee and love East Tennessee, hence the Tennessee Vols here. But yeah, I started as a chief operating officer for this regional security company, and really with the idea of how can we help this company grow. They were ready to start a growth phase, and a lot of that was centered on really operationalizing a lot of ideas. It was really trying to standardize things so that they were scalable, so that they were sustainable, and really focusing on customers and listening to customers and what they liked, what they didn't like, and really trying to hone in on those things and make them a part of every day at that organization. So I met Barry, our organization CEO, in our MBA program at UT.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this virtual bank. I need somebody to run it. Would you be interested?" And the rest is history. So I've been in banking about a year now and really excited to be here. There is so much potential in this space. It's been, it's such an old industry, but I think there's still so much room for us to continue to dial in on some of these best practices that maybe other industries have adopted more quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what a great story. I don't think there's very many people. Oh, I know there's not very many people I've spoken with over the last couple of years who have even remotely a close story to what you're talking about. But I think that's also indicative of the leadership at the bank, right? Bringing in someone of your caliber who has completely different perspectives on what can work, and that fresh thinking is what is going to create something that has never been done before. So there's a lot to unpack, and honestly, I'm excited about diving into as much as we can. I know you allocated 6 hours for this interview, which is fantastic. So I hope we don't run out of tape.
But I have a hard stop at 6 hours.
Let's stick with that transition. Right. So you obviously, and I know Barry Allen as well, president and CEO of the bank, and super charismatic guy. And I think he's done a fantastic job of building this team. So he had to have made one heck of a sales pitch to you. So, let's get into that. Like, what was the conversation? And I want you to get as detailed and as open as you want here. So what was the conversation like that compelled Brett enough to walk out of this career path that you were on, that's obviously extremely successful, and to open your eyes to, community banking?
Yeah, so it was a great sales pitch, hence me being here. Barry is one of the most charismatic people that I know, and you just alluded to that. And when we had the conversation, the idea was really around, we've got this idea for a virtual bank, but we don't know how to monetize it. And this is a problem that a lot of community banks and a lot of banks in general are trying to solve right now, is how do we create a system or a structure where we can serve our customers, but where it's not just pure overhead. And so that's really the idea that enticed me and got me excited about Tower. Was one, the fact that Barry was thinking in this way, that he was thinking outside of the box, that he was thinking differently. There was a lot of risk inherently for both of us bringing me to the bank, right? There's
Sure.
risk for him and his reputation bringing me. If things didn't go well, there's risk for me leaving a career where I did have a lot of success and trying something completely new. But I think the one thing that really caught my eye and that was exciting about Tower and that was exciting about this venture was the capability or the ability to really build something from the ground up, and to be able to look back over the next year or two and know, hey, this is something that didn't even exist a couple of years ago, and now look at the impact it's having bank-wide and system-wide. And so that's why I'm really excited to be here. And that's also where the win is for Barry and for the bank, is we're figuring out now, and we're sort of in the process of this currently, of how do we monetize this thing and make it something that doesn't just cost overhead, but that actually generates revenue, and hopefully sizable revenue for the bank.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think what would be good is to even maybe just give some of the listeners a perspective on what we're talking about. Because, Tower Community Bank, not a new financial institution, but in I would say the same lane is almost, 90 to 95% of community banks across the United States, which is established, successful, family owned a lot of times, or the same shareholders over, decades of time, which, that whole mantra mentality of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Or if it's been profitable and has been working, why deviate that path? So to have those ideas to change and shift are significant. And this wasn't the first thing that's been done. So why don't we take a step back and maybe a step up, and look at it for everyone from a perspective of what's going on at Tower Community Inc. What have you joined into? What are you coming on as a part of? Just kind of share with the audience the story of Tower Community Bank, as it stands today going into 2023. And what are the shifts in customer service? What are the shifts in the business model a little bit?
Yeah. So, and I'll speak to this to the best of my ability with my knowledge being here a year and picking up.
You're an expert. You're in a year. You're an expert.
So Tower has always had, and a lot of community banks have this story, right? It was started for a reason. The community had a need. They were underserved from a banking perspective, members of the community who couldn't get access to loans or bank accounts elsewhere. And so Tower was created to help serve miners, factory workers, and other people who had trouble getting bank accounts in other places, and trouble getting loans in other places, and to provide them a service that was much needed. And Tower really has had a ton of success over the years in serving those segments, and that really hasn't changed over time. So our heart is still really around how do we serve pockets of the population that are maybe underserved or maybe not served at all. And so that's really where we've tried to niche down over time. And part of that this year is launching a Latino bank that we are super excited to be launching in Murfreesboro, and that's coming online here in the next month, and is super exciting for us as a bank because, again, that's a segment of the population here in Middle Tennessee that wasn't served to the degree that they should have been. And part of our success in that arena so far has just been listening and understanding and trying to provide a service that wasn't being provided before. And so really that's the whole idea in our virtual bank as well, is how do we, instead of having our customers have to come into the branch to complete a transaction or to open an account or to apply for a loan, can we do that virtually? Can we do that without them coming into the office? And that then gives the power back to the customer. And I think that's what a lot of people really want today, not just in a bank, but in any service provider, is let me choose.
Yep.
Right? I want to be able to choose. Yeah. If I want to go to the bank, I want to have a bank nearby that I can go to. But if I'm busy or I'm out of town or my kid is sick and I can't make it in, I still want to have the opportunity to do the same things that I could do in the branch, at home, or from anywhere I've got an internet connection. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to solve for with the virtual bank. And that's what we're really excited about right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think one of the things you said there is important about the listening piece. So you said you guys are listening to your customer base, listening to the community that you guys are serving. How were you listening? Do you want to share some of that? Was it direct communication, engagement, open dialogue, feedback from customers? I mean, what did that look like? What kind of strategies did you guys pursue?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. When we did our relaunch or our rebrand, when we sort of became Tower, and that was the new brand that we took on, there was a lot that went into that. There was a lot of testing that we partnered with a marketing firm to do to sort of test different names and ideas and see what stuck and what resonated with people. And that's always been a commitment that we've had, is listening in that way. But I think it also comes to talking to your frontline team members, and they hear most of what your customers have to say, right? They're hearing the complaints when there's complaints. They're hearing the praise when there's praise. And they hear it repetitively enough that if you go and you talk to a teller who's been there for 5 years, they can probably tell you your 3 to 5 biggest customer complaints like that.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of where we start to gain traction. It is direct customer communication, but I think don't neglect to talk to people who are regularly interacting with customers, because they are going to have the quickest and probably most accurate opinion on what could be changed really quickly to gain traction with your customers.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's always interesting to me when we talk about this type of a topic with our clients across the United States, those that are blazing a trail or doing something that others that are not doing is because they're listening. And they're not just listening with, hey, I'm going to send a survey out after an interaction. I'm going to actually actively listen, then engage, then maybe try some things and be willing for some of those things to fail, but be willing to try. So I think that's what I love about the virtual bank and what you guys are launching and the vision that Barry has and that the bank is supporting, that you're literally spearheading yourself. So talk us through what the last year has looked like for you and coming in at the very front edge of that with just a vision or a concept or a framework of what a virtual bank is. And then what were the steps that you took to start to implement that, get teams behind that, bring technologies into that? I mean, that's how we know that Invo became a part of the story. Help us to
Right.
understand a little bit about what each one of those steps were.
Yeah. So coming into the banking industry, into Tower, was really, like you said, it was just an idea. There was a thought that I had, hey, I think we could generate revenue potentially exponentially by partnering with service providers or even product providers and offering a point of sale loan service that was instant. So you've got instant decisioning. The loan then funds directly to the partner. And so the business partner would receive the loan funds instead of the end client. And then allowing those partners then to refer to us clients. So instead of going out and finding one client, I'm going and finding one business partner that sends me 5 clients per week, right? Or 10 applications, and we approve 50, 60, 70% of those, whatever that number may be. So that was the initial idea when I came in. And the first thing that I did when I got to Tower was really, again, listening. That's been big in my career. And so that's one of the things that that I took from a guy named Jocko Willink, if you all have heard of him. And Jake, I know you have. He's got this concept called big eyes, big ears. Big eyes, big ears. Yeah. And so when you come in, just observing, asking questions. Why do we do it this way? How did this come about? You know, if someone's saying, hey, we have to do it this way, my first question is always digging into, okay, why? And then if they say, well, that's the way we've always done it, we're going to dig a little deeper. Okay, well, who taught you this? And then I'm going to go talk to that person. Why do we do it this way? And so a lot of question asking. Next was creating a vision for the virtual bank. And so finding a vision statement that resonated with our team members, that resonated with our customers, that resonated with our leadership team was the next challenge. And once we had that, started building a team. And so I had my first team member join about 2 months after I got to Tower. Okay. And she's someone who's been at Tower quite a while and put a lot of trust in me to come to a new division of the bank. But she's really been my business partner in this whole thing and has helped me sort of build this idea from the ground up. And a lot of, I'd say the progress feels really incremental at times. It feels like, man, you know, I see 100 things that could be done next week, but it's really taking that list and looking at it and saying, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things that if I accomplish them this week, they move me in the direction in a significant enough way that next week I can build on that? Because there is so much. If you're building a new division or maybe you're starting a new idea at your bank or working on a new project, overwhelm can be so massive in those moments. And there's just hundreds of things that could be done. And this role for me is a lot like entrepreneurship, where if I need a marketing piece, I'm doing that, right? I'm doing the graphic design. If I want a podcast recorded, I'm doing that. And then I'm editing it. You know, if I want a web page built, I'm building the web page. If I need to hire someone, I'm doing the hiring. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And finding ways to break it down into smaller chunks and to say, hey, if I could get these 3 things done, just these 3, I know that I've won the week. And that's something that's really helped me feel like my head's above water when I feel like maybe my body's weighing me down. I can at least say, hey, I've got some oxygen here. We're making progress. And I'm really, really happy with where we are, you know, a year in. It's been a tough road. And I don't know that I would wish it on anyone else, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, it is. One of the things you mentioned earlier, and I couldn't get it out of my head, was the big eyes, big ears comment.
Mm-hmm.
One time in an interview, I was told the good Lord blessed me with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I think that meant I was talking too much.
Yeah, I think so.
It was a very embarrassing interview. I still got the job though, so I guess it wasn't too bad.
Could have been worse.
But my ears are also big, so I guess I fall into Jocko's camp as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of power in that. And I think a lot of it is also just humility and realizing that even if I have an idea, I can't get there alone. That I need a team around me that believes in the idea, that is excited about it. And those relationships are only built through listening and through understanding and through seeing people's goals and dreams and engaging in those in a meaningful way. And so I just can't speak enough to, like, regardless of the position that I've ever been in, it's so easy the easy way is just to be like, I know what I'm doing, I'll just make this call.
Yeah.
But every time I've done that, there's been someone that said, hey, I knew the answer and you just didn't ask. And so it's been a challenge for me to sort of remain humble and continue to listen. And that's something that I wake up every day and really try to put at the forefront of my mind. Is like, what am I going to learn today? How am I going to grow today? How am I going to challenge myself and not come in thinking that I have answers, but come in asking the right questions?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think we need to take a little bit of a pivot to learn a little bit more about Brett. He was talking about keeping his head above water. Did you know that Brett is a world-class paddleboarder? Most of Tennessee knows. I know that as a child, I was paddleboarded, but I think that was something different. Two different things. That may be the difference between growing up in Missouri versus growing up in Tennessee. I don't know. Maybe so. Do they? So paddleboarding. All right, let's learn a little bit more about Brett. How did you even start paddleboarding? Can we thank your wife for that? Because that's the only reason I ever stood on one.
Yeah. So, man. So the first time that I paddleboarded was actually in Florida, and I did this high intensity interval training class on a paddleboard, which was the most wild thing I've ever done. So you're on a paddleboard and you're like doing burpees, except instead of going to the ground and jumping back up, you hit the paddleboard and you roll off into the water and climb back onto the board. And that's a paddleboard burpee. So that was the first experience. And that actually made me never want to paddleboard again. I was like, I've had enough. But I had a pastor of a church that I was going to in East Tennessee that was an avid paddleboarder. And he's like, hey, man, come on out. I've got an extra board. And so we went out, and we actually went out before it was light out. So it's completely dark. We get to the lake. We paddle out to the middle, and the sun rises. And the lakes in East Tennessee are just stunning. I mean, it looks like you're in Fiji or something. I mean, there's mountains all around. There's fog, and then the sunrise coming over. I was sold after that.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not someone I would say that does it in a really extreme way. I know there are people who will like paddle rivers and things like that. For me, it's a way to relax. I love nature. I love the water. I couldn't afford a boat, so this was a way to get out on the water. And enjoy.
Yeah, you did. This was the Brett boat.
That's right. Seats too. So yes. Yeah, I've been paddleboarding ever since, and it's one of my favorite hobbies, favorite pastimes is just getting out on the water, watching a sunrise, sunset. It's really special.
What you said sounds wonderful, and you did sell it very well, but burpees are on my short list of least favorite things. And my only experience of attempting the paddleboard is in the Gulf of Mexico. And I say attempt because I watched my teenage daughter and my wife clock away at like 4 or 5 football fields away, just like plowing, like leaving me behind. I'm just trying to not fall in. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And I snowboard. I think I'm pretty athletic, but apparently I have no sense of balance. It's bad.
Yeah, it's a different thing when you get the waves underneath you and they come from different directions. And most of the lakes that I paddle on are like completely still when I'm paddling on them. So if that makes you feel better, I don't know that I'm much better balanced, just probably had less waves.
Oh, Brett, thank
helping
you.
you out
Trying
here.
to make me feel better here.
Yeah, he's trying to help him sleep at night a little bit more.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm going
That's
to
right.
lay there tonight, and I'm just going to picture Brett on a sheet of glass paddleboarding while
That's
the
right.
sun rises, with like
That's
the
right.
Tower Bank logo rising above the mountain, like a perfect commercial.
Telling yourself that you're actually a great paddleboarder.
Yeah, just over and over. No, it sounds like I need to make a trip out there to visit you, and then you can show me what
Yeah.
what good looks like.
Yeah, I've got an extra board anytime.
Let's go. All right, so we'll
go.
jump back in. I think about the strategies that you shared. Let's dive in a little bit more to some of the technologies that you're starting to implement. And I know you've really leveraged different things for different areas, for the lending piece, to the engagement piece. And of course, we'll get in a little bit more to what you're doing with the Invo platform, but unpack a little bit for us. What was it like to decide on what vendors you were going to use in different areas, what technologies you were going to use in different areas, and how things are going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Tower has, I think, a long history of being very careful about who we partner with. And I'm sure that if you are working at a community bank, you can probably say the same thing, is that you're really selective in who you do business with, and that partnering with someone and signing an agreement with a company is not taken lightly. And that was something that was a little unique to me coming into the industry, was sort of that vendor due diligence process and learning that, and understanding the links that we have to go to really vet our business partners and to make sure that they're meeting all the requirements that we have. And so I think the first one that I had interaction with was actually you all at Invo. And selection process for us often involves starting with the project and looking at what we're trying to accomplish. So let's look at the outcome that we're trying to accomplish for the bank. Let's find some providers that may meet those outcomes. And then we start the process of sort of getting to know them. And for us, it's really important that someone has a long history, at least several years of a history of showing that they can do what they're claiming to do. And so one of the things that we're careful to avoid is someone that's really just brand new, just because there can be some instability there.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there's some great value propositions out there, I think there's also inherently a lot of risk. And so if we are unable to find a provider that's got a demonstrated link, we may look into doing that internally, or, hey, is this something we could build ourselves, or is this something we could partner with someone else to build? But for our virtual bank, one of the first things that we were looking at was we need a new way to give our customers to reach out to us. And one of the things that we loved was video, and specifically we loved Invo. And I don't just mean the platform. We love the platform, but we also love the team at Invo. So I mentioned we're a very relational bank,
Sure.
And we really do care who we do business with. And Invo felt a lot more like family than business partner. A lot of the same ideologies, a lot of the same philosophies, a lot of the same approaches to taking care of our teams, to achieving goals. And I think that's really what matters to us most. There's an obvious, I think, minimum requirement that, hey, the software has to be able to engage in a way that's meaningful to our customers. And if we can't hit that minimum requirement, it's a no deal. But when we find one like Invo that's a home run, where not only does it meet those requirements, it also accomplishes everything we need to do while providing us with people to work with that we really enjoy working with. That's something that's really, really meaningful. Other softwares that we are currently sort of working to get off the ground, we partnered with a company called iSoftPull, which is a sort of a unique name, but they do soft credit decisioning with a credit score available, so that we could more instantaneously decision our loans that we are doing. And we've had a really good positive experience with them. And they even have forms built in that can do that decisioning, so a customer can input information, a team member can input information, and then the decisioning, whether yes or no, can send them different places. So that's something that's really helped expedite the process as well. And then I also wouldn't underestimate figuring out how to use what we have better has been another one. So figuring out are we underusing tools that we already pay for? And it turned out for us that there were a few that we did. And so that was something that we really chased after as well.
Well, let's dive in a little bit further. I know we were talking a little bit about the strategies and some of your different partners that you have either pulled up to where you wanted them to be and cultivated those things, or you've identified and brought on new partners. Is there anyone else you would want to identify or kind of walk out there that helped to support the virtual bank as you've been developing that?
Yeah, I think one other that's definitely worth mentioning is a company called Get Guru, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Get Guru, but it's a knowledge base, and it's full text searchable. You can attach files. And so you create these things called cards, and it structures and sort of has a hierarchy to information. So you can structure it however you want. But the great thing is it's actually a Chrome plugin. So we can run it over the top of Invo. And it's a little panel that you click that pops out, and our team members can search anything. So let's say it's someone newer and they may not know, hey, what are the hours for our Chattanooga branch? They can search branch, or they can search Chattanooga, or they can search hours. And all of those would pull up that card that has that information. And so we've worked hard at sort of building that repository of practices and operating procedures. And to this point, you could search almost any process that we have, or any question that a customer may ask, and you're going to have an answer there on, hey, here's how you do it. Here's the software that you need. Here's the things to look out for. And so that's been really helpful for us as a fast-growing team, and as a team that has a lot of new people coming in, is getting them up to speed and helping them understand where information is. And if we have one central place, that's really, really helpful. So Get Guru has been a good partner for that.
That's awesome. And just so for everyone who is listening in and maybe doesn't understand the complexities of the solutions that you guys have deployed, we're talking about where there's a live engagement taking place between the customer and an employee of Tower, or an agent, as that's what we would call them at Invo.
Yep.
And so they're live in video, but being able to then put in their hands and empower them to be that one source or that one resource for that customer while they're on the fly, not having to say, I'll get back to you on that, or hey, let me go get you an answer. They could literally be engaged in live, almost with an overlay, and have information being available to them, just almost like a library. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. And that it reduces hold time. It increases our survey results on the back end of the call. It's really, really helpful. And I mean, if you put yourself in a customer's shoes and you call somewhere, really you hope that the person that you talk to first is the person that solves that, and that you don't need another call. You don't need a call back. You don't need a follow-up email. And so this is really empowering our team to engage in a way where they feel confident that they're able to do that, hopefully on that first call.
Yeah, man, that's good. So let's stay there for just a second. And when I say stay there, let's kind of walk through what that experience actually looks like for the customer. So you've brought so many awesome pieces of technology together to open this new engagement platform, if you will, through your digital channels. So what does it look like? Let's say that I am coming to the Tower Community Bank website and I need to seek a loan, or I need support, or I just have questions. Walk me through and walk the listeners through what that's actually going to be like if we've never done that before.
Absolutely. So our goal is to make it as easy and as obvious as possible, so that...
Ooh, I like that. Easy and obvious. That's
easy
good.
And obvious. Yeah, you shouldn't have to hunt for it. So right when you get to our homepage, your IP address, if it hasn't been to our site in the past 7 days, is going to get a pop-up. And that pop-up says, hey, our virtual bank is live. Meet one of our virtual bankers now. So if you want to engage in the virtual bank and you're not wanting to go back into a branch currently for whatever task, you've got that link there that's going to push you over to the Invo landing page. Alternatively, we also are, hopefully by the end of the day today, we will have the Invo chat widget live on our website, which is another way to engage. And the thing I think
Brett just called us out. Like, we have to have that done before the end of the day. Was that our CTA?
No, that's not your CTA. We're waiting on one last change on the other side of our web hosting provider.
Oh man, I even teed that up. He could have totally said that we had to do that. So
could have held your feet to the fire. Yeah.
What a gentleman.
Yeah, unfortunately, it truly wasn't you. So would have loved that opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah. So having that chatbot is just another way to engage. Again, it's all about for Tower. How do we put the power back in the customer's hands and give them a lot of options to engage us? The chat seamlessly then goes into a video call. So let's say we aren't able to resolve something by chat. The person may be getting frustrated or they're not getting the answer that they're wanting. We can then prompt them to go right into a video call from the chat seamlessly, and that will open up with their information in the portal. And it's really, really simple. And that's really what it's all about for us, is engaging. And it's really a number of clicks. So you get to the virtual bank landing page, which is the first page of the Invo app, essentially.
Yep.
And it's really customizable. You all were great, I'll say, to work with, even some little one-off things that we were like, hey, could it be possible to do this? And you all always said yes, and always found a way to make it happen, which was really cool for us. And again, is why we love partnering with Invo. And so customer lands there, they choose, hey, I want to call someone now, or I want to call someone later. I can schedule a call. After that, they choose what they want to do. What's the reason you're there? Am I here to get a loan? Do I just have a general question? Do I want to check an account balance? Whatever that is, they've got a button. Press the button, fill out some basic customer information, which allows us to follow up if for some reason, there's a technical failure. They don't have good cell phone service and they're calling from their cell phone and it drops.
Sure.
We can shoot them an email to follow up, or call them to follow up after that. And so then it rings in and they see a little bit of our marketing flair right from the start. So there's a little, almost like a video that plays while they're on hold, and then our agents answer.
That's good. And I think it's also fair to say that you guys challenged our team. And so I think back to initially, we sat down and talked through what we wanted this to be. And then we started the process of getting it off the ground, implementing it, started to refine the scope, right? And that's when I loved how you told the story. And I remember this, you told the story of what you wanted the customer to experience. And I don't think I had ever heard a banker that I had engaged with during the onboarding process explain it to that way. And to be fair, I don't sit on all of those, but I don't think I'd ever heard it articulated the way that you did, which was, we want it to look like this. We want it to feel like this. We want it to make it easy. Like you said, easy and obvious, right? But I think about how you wanted it to look and feel like Tower. And I hadn't really ever considered that before, right? You don't want the software to take the customer out of the experience. You actually want them to draw them in and not feel disjointed. And by challenging us in that, honestly, I think a lot of our other clients have also benefited from that. So it's back to what you said, relationship is important. It's important to us as well, but you guys have also helped us, like they say, iron sharpens iron. It's definitely a real example of that, though, and how you guys pushed us to do that. So you mentioned surveys. So are you guys are utilizing surveys at the conclusion of these interactions, and what does that look like? And if you want to, what questions are you asking?
Yeah, we are. So the main we are using the surveys. So to answer that first, yes, we are using the surveys, and we love that feature because it gives us an immediate feedback from the customer. And the nice thing about the survey feature within Invo is the simplicity. So again, easy and obvious. There's 5 stars. There's 3 questions. All the customer has to do is click where they want on the stars, and there's half stars as well. So they scroll over, they click, they go to the next question, scroll over, click, submit. And that's all there is to it. All the sort of demographic data is already tied to the call, so there's no need for them to re-enter that. So they're just evaluating the call. I believe the first question that we asked is, how was your experience with your video banker today? And then we have a second question that I'm failing to remember. And the third is, how likely are you, based on your experience today, to recommend the virtual bank to a friend? And so we have 3 questions there. And really that last one is the key, right? Because if someone's not willing to recommend us to a friend or a colleague, that's a real concern. And that's where we have to be following up and understanding what the issues were with that call that would cause someone not to want to come back.
That's good. We're actually, just a good time to bring it up. You didn't really ask, but I'm going to share it anyway. So one of the things that has been presented to us is the ability to change the way that scoring system works. So you can actually capture a net promoter score. So you'll be able to decide, hey, do I want to allow my customers to provide feedback from 1 to 10 Do I want to use the star system? And be able to navigate that. So yeah, obviously you can ask any questions that you want. You can ask for open-ended feedback as well, but you'll also be able to start capturing some net promoter score data if that is something that would be helpful for you guys. So little extra nugget there.
I'm a big fan of net promoter score.
Brett's not the only one that can share cool things today.
It's not paddleboarding though, so
this is true. This is true. That's good. It's good. So marketing and advertising, I think that I love whenever you're able to provide a tailored experience to customers. And there's a time period there that can exist where I've come to the website or the digital platform, whatever that is, on my mobile or on the laptop, and I've went through the process of chatting and now I need to go into video, and sometimes it's instantaneous, right? So it's going to just take a couple seconds to connect. Sometimes you're going to pivot out of chat and go into video, and it could be a minute or two, right? And so you guys are taking advantage of that captive audience and creating some content there. So how does that look? Like what decisions have you guys made for marketing or advertising or tailoring the message to the customer while they're waiting there?
Yeah, so we're still testing a lot of our ideas here, and again, getting feedback from people like, hey, did you see anything while you were on hold, or did you see anything while you were waiting for us to pick up? Do you remember anything about that? Because a lot of times the customer may say, hey, yeah, I mean, something was on there, but I wasn't really looking. Okay, well then we probably don't have the right message to engage with the customers that are using the virtual bank. And so it has been a lot of refining and trying to rethink the messaging. Our initial thought was like, hey, let's just advertise, products and specials. And I think there's a lot of merit in that, but I think the message has to be curated in a way that attracts attention, which is the difficult thing because everybody's attention is spread really, really thin. And so finding the right messaging to engage with people in a meaningful way is sort of, I'd say, in progress right now. That's something that we're trying a lot of different ad copy. We're trying a lot of different graphics. We're trying a lot of different things like that, both on Invo and in other advertising, just to see how people are engaging with the content.
That's good. I love it. Not being afraid to try new things.
Yeah.
I think I've heard him say that a few times today.
Yeah, that's something Tower's not afraid of.
That's good. I think you're a champion for that too. So let's dive in a little bit to this new idea of what you guys have created and launched. And this is a novel concept. You guys have given it a name. You've given it a brand. It's official in launching. And so I'm just wanting to know how much you're willing to share with this, because I think this is also indicative of trying and doing something completely different. And it speaks right to the heart of what Tower believes in, what Barry has had a vision about, and then what you're honestly leading the charge with. And it's your story to tell. I think it's your success story also. Share with everybody that's here a little bit about that, about momentum and what's going on.
Yeah, so this is that idea that I was alluding to earlier of like, hey, this is what brought me to Tower. This is the reason that I'm here, and sort of the brunt of the work that I have on my plate is like trying to create something that does generate revenue through the virtual bank and through Invo specifically. Like, can we engage in video in a way that's meaningful to our customers, in a way that allows us to generate revenue? And for us, that's through loans. And so we have this idea with Momentum by Tower is the name of the product. And really we're partnering with business owners, with doctors in certain fields. And we're competing with a lot of the point of sale lenders that exist currently, because we found is, again, listening. As we started talking to practitioners, as we started talking to dentists and orthodontists, as we started talking to HVAC repair company owners, we were hearing that they were all really unhappy with their lending services. And so that's what really catapulted this idea and gave us the hope that it really did have wheels, is just listening and trying to understand, okay, like what are the pain points? What's frustrating to you? And so we have been able to sort of generate a new concept, we think, for point of sale lending. And it's a little early to share all the specifics of it, but the idea being someone is paying at an HVAC provider, they're able to apply, get an instant pre-approval, and then to close their loan. So after they've gotten their pre-approval, that's all done without any face-to-face contact, because we found that was a little too intimidating for people. They didn't want to hop on video and get denied on video. It was just something that wasn't working. And so we had a really high abandon rate. And so we retooled the process so that the pre-approval actually happens before the video interaction. And then the video interaction actually welcomes them. And so we're then able to welcome that customer to Tower face to face and say, hey, thank you so much for being a Tower customer. Do you understand everything about your loan? Do you have any questions? And that's a really engaging time. People are usually relieved or happy when they're getting those loan approvals. And so then to connect and engage with them and sort of welcome them to the Tower customer base is a really exciting way to engage, and it's really meaningful for people. And so that's how we're partnering Invo with sort of these other processes that we're using through Momentum by Tower. And it's something that we're really, really excited about. We've got a number of providers that have signed up. We've got a number more that will hopefully be signing up really soon. And we think that idea is going to take us pretty far.
Man, that's good. Momentum by Tower. That has got a ring to it.
It's got a nice ring. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually even got a chance to hear the feedback that you just shared about the process, and I call it workflow for lack of better words, but the customer journey. How's that? That's probably the best way to articulate that.
It's probably the best way. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think about that path, and there's no better way that you're going to build a bridge of relationship than when they just felt that emotional win, which is what that approval process is. If we just get to the heart of the emotional side of the experience, which we talk at length about, and how do we bring technology into the picture without losing the connection, the relationship, the partnership. And that's where that emotional measurement comes in. And if you're able to, I don't want to capitalize has a negative connotation to it, but if you're able to then take that jump from an emotional win into actually joining them in that win and then welcoming them to the Tower family, I mean, that's when you start talking about driving loyalty in out of the gate. Like, how do we get a bedrock of a relationship to build on for loyalty in the long haul? I'm really excited about what this is going to be. I'm really excited about what's going to happen.
Yeah, we are too.
I think it's great. So where do you go from here? You've got this thing laid out. You've got the business plan. You've got the strategy. You've attenuated the strategy a little bit. You've got it out there and deployed. You're actively promoting it. So I'm not asking you to share the goals, but I'm curious. Do you have some benchmarks or things in place that you're actively measuring the success of this? That you've got some goals for yourself, for the bank? Just kind of walk us through now that you're here, and it's January of 2023 as of this recording. What is this? What does the year ahead look like? How are you gonna make this thing continue to rock and roll?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on at Tower right now. We had an incredible year of growth last year, and so really this year is doubling down on that growth, continuing to build a foundation so that we can continue to grow at that rate. And so there's a lot of internal sort of building that we're doing to give us the capability to be standardized and scalable when the time comes and as we continue to grow. That's both in the virtual bank and everywhere within Tower, which is really exciting. For the virtual bank specifically, we've got a number of projects that we're working on. Momentum by Tower is probably the biggest and shiniest one on the plate. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the other ones that we're working on. We're starting to get a lot more into social advertising, driving into that pre-approval process. So not only are we partnering with people, but we're also going direct to customer. They're branded a little bit differently, but we're doing a ton of A/B testing on that and trying different copy, trying different messages, there's only so much with fair lending that you can do in terms of like demographically segmenting people, but there's a little bit that you can do in that way. So really just trying to find like, hey, what are the niches that we can really serve well, and where people will be proud to partner with Tower. They're going to be excited to partner with us, and we can meet a real need that makes our communities better places, as our mission says, to live, work, and raise a family, which is something that's really, really important to us. So the marketing engine, we're spinning that up this year. That's a really, really excited one. Yeah. We also have, as most community banks do, I guess something that we're trying to solve right now is we have so much customer data. How do we start to use it to engage our customers in a more meaningful way? So instead of marketing one-to-many, where I'm just blasting out to my entire email list or maybe a subset of my email list, I'm actually marketing specific products to specific peoples that are highly likely to want those products. And so building the infrastructure to support those types of data-driven decisions is another project that we're working on, another massive project. And all of these things really tie together with this idea of how do we empower people to get the financial help that they need when they want it, where they want it, and how they want it. And I think the best way to do that is through the use of data. And so that's another one that we're working on actively this year that's really, really exciting, has a lot of potential for the bank, but it's just a heavy lift. And I think that's really 2023 is just, it's going to be a heavy lift. There's a lot of foundation that needs to be built. For Momentum by Tower specifically, I'd like to have 30 partners this year is sort of my personal goal. I think if we can hit 30, I think if we can hit 30, we can put up some impressive numbers. You all can do the math on that. If each partner's giving us, even 12 loans a month times 30, it's material, right? It makes a big impact to the bottom line. And then another thing that we're actively working on as a bank is how do we bring other processes? So how do we start to bring deposit processes? Is there something that we could do either tied in with Momentum by Tower or separately to draw deposits into that process as well? And so trying to solve for other products that we have in the bank and how we can make those more approachable and reachable to more people is something that we're also focused on. But it's a heavy lift year. There's some of it is fun and some of it is rewarding, but a lot of it is just like really, really ugly, boring, repetitive stuff that needs to be done. The most fun thing that we have going on is the virtual bank and Tower is launching a podcast called The Impact Code. And
let's go.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. And it's not really anything specific to the financial industry. All that we're trying to do is have conversations with people who are making an impact. And that could be locally within their community. That could be within their business. That could be nationally or globally. So we've got, in the first 5 podcasts, we've got a national best-selling author. We've got someone that I met through the Invo Summit, actually, Justin Skinner, if you remember him, who is also an author and speaker and just a phenomenal guy. And really, that's the idea is like, let's just have conversations about people's stories. How did they get to where they were? Was it immediate? And a lot of times the answer is no. And I think the exciting thing in having those conversations is really unpacking like what drives people. How did they find their way to that path? Because it looks from the outside, I think we see someone who's successful and probably assume an easy story or assume they knew that they wanted to do that or assume that maybe they had a lot of lucky breaks along the way and maybe they did. But I think having those conversations helps us understand and relate in a way that challenges our thinking and helps us grow. And so the short answer to that question and to sort of what we're doing with our podcast is we're talking about how people are making an impact on the world around them in a positive way. And there's a lot of fun stories that arise out of that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And that also kind of gets at the like a lot of people think that banks or feel their bank is maybe like impersonal, like they can't really connect with them. And kind of diving into like a podcast where it isn't just like a marketing pitch, like you're here to tell real stories from real people. I think that connects with customers, connects with people at a real level. So that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, we're really excited. It does. It makes the bank human in a way. It's something that's now, it's not just a company. It's a brand that I can connect with and resonate with. And really the only, I'd say, advertising that we do on the podcast is just saying, hey, this podcast is brought to you completely free by Tower Community Bank. They're passionate about sharing knowledge. And that's such a great way just to plug like, hey, we really are about making our communities a better place to live, work, and raise a family.
That's good. Impact Code, correct?
The Impact Code, yep.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, so that people can come and find that. What is that live now? Or are you getting ready to launch that?
It's going live. It's currently pending, so it should be hopefully by the end of this is the first week of January. By the end of this week, it should be live.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we'll make sure and link off to that as well.
Yeah, that's perfect timing.
Awesome.
It is. Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking a lot about the process, and I appreciate you sharing all of that, Brett. It's so helpful. Um, and this is going back to maybe some of the minutia of that, from the customer journey, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and capturing that information. Are you guys actively using a CRM today at the bank? Is that something you're looking to deploy? And I'm just curious on that strategy. We get asked that question all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's a divisive one, right? I think people either love CRM or they hate CRM. I think that,
Yeah,
so
for
to
sure.
answer your question, no, we're not using a CRM. Plan is to deploy one, and the question is which and how. So we're still sort of in the process of building that strategy. The reason that I'm passionate about CRM and I think that it is necessary is so that we can have a continual picture of what's happening with a customer. So that if a customer
Yeah,
calls my colleague in, let's say, Jasper or Whitwell, they've logged that interaction, and now they call me. I can see that interaction.
yeah,
I think the drag on projects that involve CRM is that they take more time. Um, it's not as easy for our team members who are actually interacting with the customers then, because there's a little bit of work to do. So some of what we're trying to do is start small with that. So starting in smaller segments of the bank where we can build that in maybe to the processes that we're currently building. So for instance, the virtual bank is a great example. We don't have a long established history of doing something a certain way. So it's really easy to go to our team and to say, hey guys, here's what we're looking to do. Here's why it's really important. And I think why, again, is always the key thing to talk about, so that your team really understands the impact that those actions have on the big picture. And so that's probably where we'll start it. But the big idea and the big reason is that as we start broadening our service hours, so right now we're currently sort of a first shift, if you will, customer service department. Big picture, we want to be a 24/7 customer service department.
mm-hmm.
Well, now we've got issues if someone called in during the day and they need to call back in at 7 p.m., right? Because we don't
Sure.
know what happened or what transpired or where we left that case from the first call to the second. So it provides consistency, and really, I think, again, empowers the customer to engage with us in a way that's meaningful to them, because now when I call in, I don't have to re-explain why I'm calling. It's not the third time I'm telling the same story because I
Yep.
couldn't get the right person the first two times. And so it's really all about, we have this term at Tower that we like to use called customer obsessed. And it really is. That's like, it's really about obsessing over that experience that our customers have when interacting with us, and finding the drag points and then really driving improvements on those. And so, short answer, I'd say no, we don't use a CRM, but we will.
Well, we don't really look for short answers on here anyway. So
No, that's not what this is all about. That's not what this is all about. Yeah, it's always interesting to me. The CRM conversation is such a broad topic to engage. And, I've got the opportunity, from my seat to speak with executives of $50 million institutions that are attempting to grow. And just recently came out of a strategy meeting with a $4.2 billion bank who is also in the same shoes you are. They do not have a CRM. And I was asking them, I was challenging them about deploying, interactive teller for retail, and they're pursuing, a new call center platform, and they're deploying text, and now they're doing chat and video banking and other things with us, and all these pieces that, in my opinion, all touch on engagement to the customer in many different ways, physically in the branch, digitally across all of those touch points we just talked about. And how do you keep track of that? And I think there was a time that, and this sounds negative, but I think there's a time where you were almost given more leeway to walk in and say, "Oh well, they don't know me, but they know so many, and they bank so many people that it's okay." I don't think that's okay anymore. I think that as a consumer, behavior has shifted so significantly that if I call in to a branch and I talk to Ryan, that the next time I walk into branch B or C or D and I see Brett, Angela, or Chris, that they're going to be able to, at just one glance, say, oh, well, Jake was at these other places from his house, on his phone, in the mobile platform, and my journey is all there. And the only way you can do that is with a CRM. And you're right, it is a super heavy lift. I've been in institutions where we've deployed CRMs just for customer management, not even to the scale that you would at a bank, but I mean, getting it off the ground is like wrestling a bear for about 9 months. But at the end, there's nothing better than a bear hug. That's how I always told the story. You got to wrestle that bear for 9 months before you can actually have the bear hug.
It's a long wrestling match.
I'm going to steal that quote.
Yeah, that's okay. Ryan's written down all of your good quotes over here.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, send them to me.
I'm just transcribing this whole meeting on this notepad. You guys haven't been seeing it.
That's good. Becoming customer obsessed. I didn't write it down, but I memorized it. So where did that all start? Is that something you brought to the bank? Is that something that was in place that you've really kind of grabbed that flag? You're running with it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a phrase that I heard from a former mentor of mine, CEO of Access, and he really drove that concept home. And in all of our calls, when I was faced with a problem, he would always go back to that idea of like, well, what do you think our customers would think? What do you think our customers would want? And, in my mind, as someone who is trying to manage a P&L, I'd say like, but man, that's so expensive, right? And that's something that we think about a lot in community banks. I think there's no more suited bunch of people to manage risk than bankers, right? And that's all. Sure. That's all we do is we manage risk all day, every day.
Yep.
And because of that, sometimes we only think in terms of risk management. And I think you can't go too wide too fast, because I think if you do, you lose focus and nothing really takes off, and you don't really make any ground, and then you're not going to have any return on that investment. So you can't go too wide too fast. But if you can find a really narrow problem and obsess over it and map out your customer journey. You talked about customer journeys, like map it from beginning to end. Like what does the customer do here? Then what does the customer do? And not from your eyes. So you're looking at your policies and your procedures, not from banker view, but from customer view. Mm-hmm. And then you're saying like, how high is the value provided in that specific step of the interaction? And then we're finding those low value interaction points and starting to say, okay, that one clearly doesn't provide any value to the customer. Can we eliminate it? Can we change it? And so, yeah, that came from the CEO of Access at the time I was there. His name was Rob Alston, and he was just an awesome mentor of mine and really generous with his time. I mean, by the time I left, he was running a couple $1 billion company, and he would still spend, every 6 weeks, a couple hours on the phone talking with me, giving me advice. But always it would go back to like, how do we serve our customers? How do we do something that's meaningful and impactful for them? And I think that's the thing that it's really easy to lose sight of when you're looking at risk management and when you're just looking at your financial statements, is the idea that customers now have more options than ever. And that is only going to continue increasing, right? And not specifically in like the number of banks, but they have more options in that they can get to more institutions more easily than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's easier than ever for me if I'm unhappy with Tower today to transfer all my money to you name it and not ever even leave my house. I can do that from the comfort of my own home.
Yep.
Right. So that idea, I think, is one that if you can really adopt it, and I think Barry is a great example of this too, which is honestly one of the biggest reasons I came to work for him, is he cares about people. And that goes for his teams. That goes for his vendor partnerships. And that goes for his customers. He really does care about them. And I've seen him multiple times in meetings where, we've got the board or we've got a group of people. And he's like, you know what, guys, like we got to think about this from the customer's perspective. And we make that tough call.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Really good.
It goes into that easy and obvious too. It goes
right
back to that phrase. Because they're going to find somewhere that's more easy, or that's easier, and that's more obvious.
That's right.
So continue to like push toward that is super important.
Yeah.
So what's next? What's the next evolution of Tower? What are your perspectives, Brett, since you've been in a customer centric and a customer service journey your entire career, whether it was at Cintas or your recent role as COO in that platform, in security, and now you've been in banking for a year. What do you see is going to be important? And this is, I'm asking you to pull back. So what do you see? Actually, it's a two-part question, I suppose. What do you see is next for Tower? And then what do you see as the next important thing for community banks to be focused on to continue to do what you said earlier, which was evolve?
Yeah. There's a lot of bright, shiny things out there right now that are really easy to get sucked into. And so I'd say it's really I think the next thing for Tower is we've got a strategic plan. We've got 5 action items on those, that strategic plan. And it's really having laser-like focus on executing on those 5 things. That's what our board has said is important. That's what our executive team, our leadership team, our customers, that is where we're going. And so finding ways to get there quickly and finding the sort of the biggest traction items first is really what I'm focused on in the virtual bank. And I know a lot of my partners are in other parts of the bank. But that's it for Tower. I mean, we are laser focused in on that thing. Anything that doesn't fit into that sort of plan is a distraction.
That's good.
And I'd say industry wide, there's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of talks about, the fintechs and the big banks just keep getting bigger. And I think there's a lot of worry in the industry. But to me, I just go back to this idea of easy and obvious that Ryan just brought back up. And thanks, Ryan, for remembering that. I think that's what's next for the industry is finding ways. I think if a community bank wants to not just survive, but thrive in the next 5 years, it's finding ways to be easy to find and for your services to be easy to access and that they're really obvious from beginning to end. Like you don't want to have to call and ask for help. No one wants to do that. They're going to find another option, right? If they have to call someone to ask for help in the middle of the loan, they're probably just going to find another website that will automate the process. So I think, finding ways to really be those easy and obvious providers is really, really important. I'd say embrace change, be willing to spend a little bit of money, which I know is a really tough thing to sell bankers on, but I think the payoff is just huge. And if you miss the boat, and you're not okay with spending a little bit of cash, by the time you're forced to spend the cash, it may be too late to recover. So, I think getting on board, and I think there's a number of strategies. I think you can choose any one of them. I think, again, don't go too wide, but I think just pick a strategy like, hey, if we improved this, our account opening online, if we improved that one thing, we'd have way more account openings, right? And focus in on that, make that the focus. You could do it with a number of things, but I think it's really staying narrow, really trying to drive value, mapping those customer journeys and making sure that every step in there is really valuable to the customer. Hey, I'll actually give you a quick example of one that we just figured out. So our online, our virtual bank account opening process was a little bit cumbersome. It involved a lot of hold time. And we were looking at it together last week and we were like, man, the customer has to be on hold for like 15 minutes for this. That's not a value spot for the customer. So how can we change this process? So we flipped it around so that we figured out that the information that we were inputting while the customer was on hold could be done without the customer on the call at all, as long as we gathered the right information up front. So we changed the information that we gathered up front and we eliminated the hold time during the middle and the end of the call and reduced a 25-minute account opening to a 5 or 6 minute call. And then as long as the customer signs their documents via DocuSign after the call, there's really no follow-up required in terms of video. So we were able to reduce the process time by like 23 minutes. And it's a way better experience for the customer. And I think that's a good example.
That's a real example.
Yeah, at 23 minutes.
Yeah, that
sounds like a great example.
Yeah, we're constantly looking at, the processes we've built to serve your customers, as a provider is we're trying to find efficiencies, right, for you operationally,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow simultaneously also improving that customer experience. Like, how
Right.
do you do those two things simultaneously? And so we're always
Mm-hmm.
looking like, how can we make wait times less? How can you make
Mm-hmm.
processes and workflows shorter? How can you increase the satisfaction scores? And
Mm-hmm.
man, moving those needles simultaneously is no small feat
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
But again, to your point, I think they use your phrase was, how do we remain laser focused on specific things? And if you remain laser focused on those specific things, whether it's the 5 things in your strategic plan or whatever your goal is that you're targeting, that's how you ensure you're going to hit that,
Mm-hmm.
or at
Mm-hmm.
least increase your likelihood of getting
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I've got a question for you. This might be the most serious one yet.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
At what point in the last year, as someone who's an outsider to banking, were you in a meeting at the bank and asked a question or said something and they were like, "What are you talking about? This guy doesn't know anything about banking. Where did this come from?"
Oh man, like every meeting I feel like I'm still, and I always intro it with like, guys, this may be the new guy in the room just asking the obvious question, but why on this? And it doesn't always have to do with banking. We were reviewing some things in regards to our health care plan for our team members, and I don't want to share any details about the conversation, but I literally just raised my hand and I'm like, hey guys, like, are we forgetting that our team members are one of our 5 strategic pillars, and sort of investing in those team members is so, like, if we're debating about this, it doesn't feel like we're really investing in the team members. And again, I think it's listening, but yeah, I've asked some really dumb questions over the past year or two. And
now let's be fair. I didn't say they were dumb questions.
No, I said that, and I don't know if that's the best word. Maybe uninformed in terms of banking in the industry. And I don't know if that's always a bad thing. I think
it's a great thing.
Yeah, I heard someone once say, you need somebody who can have fresh eyes on the couches. And what he meant was, when you have furniture that's in a space and you're so used to being in the space, you get to the point where you don't even see the furniture, right? And then somebody new walks in and they're like, man, that's an ugly couch. And
It's been to my house.
Yeah, you didn't even know, right? Because it became a part of the scenery. It became a part of what you know and what you're comfortable with. And I think that happens in business a lot, is we get comfortable with what we know and we get comfortable with what we've built. And somebody sometimes just saying, hey guys, that's an ugly couch, is really, really important. And it's not always fun being that person. But I think even, if it's not me, I think we need somebody else. I think every organization needs someone who's looking at those things and saying, hey guys, that if I was a customer, I wouldn't like that. I know you all think it's good because you saw what it was before. And you're going from that perspective. I'm coming from the perspective of, I don't know anything. And, that's a different place to view from, but that's the place your customers view from a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. All right. So I want to give you one last chance. So we're about at the end here. And so I wanted to kind of open this up to you. What else would you like to share, either about yourself and in your short journey into this industry, giving some fresh perspectives? And I think the best way to kind of encapsulate that is, there's no better person to challenge the status quo than you. You're bringing those outside perspectives in. You've got a year under your belt. You've got an opportunity to challenge a lot of people. So what I would like to do is just leave this as the last question. Is, what would you like to share about yourself, or what would you like to share about community banking in general?
About myself, I think it's really important just to say that, like, there's nothing inherently special or unique about me or my approach. And I don't say that in like a self-derogatory way. I just mean that anyone is capable of doing the things that we're doing here at Tower. Anyone is capable of, building a relationship with someone outside the industry, even if it's not someone who's coming in at maybe like an executive or leadership level. Can you hire someone in the teller position that comes in from outside the industry, and can you ask them for their feedback and really value it and try to understand their perspective? I don't think that there's anything that makes me or the projects that I'm focusing in on really, really unique or special. I think they're things that we're all capable of. It's just having a leader who's willing to, such as Barry, who's willing to sort of take on that risk and try something a little bit different and have a different vision. And then, as far as the community banking industry, it would probably just be, the number one thing I've seen as I've started to get to know other community banks, and there's a lot of great people in community banking, and I feel really honored to be a part of the community bank space. And I think we do a lot of things really, really well. So for all the things I've said, hey, we could improve on this today, I think there's a lot of things that community banking gets right, which is why it's still around, right? And why it's still in a lot of cases thriving. And so I'd say if you are a community banker and you're looking for sort of that next step, I would say, again, find something that you can focus in on. Maybe start by mapping your customer journeys and really map them from beginning to end, high value to low value. Each step, you're looking at high value, low value, not from your perspective, from the clients. Yeah. Just pick 2 or 3 and start there. And I think a lot of change and a lot of growth, personally and professionally, starts with really, really small increments. And then it builds momentum, for a lack of a better word, right? If you want to lose 50 pounds, you don't start out by doing everything at once. If you do, you're probably going to burn out. You start out by hey, maybe instead of eating the chips, I'm going to, eat some vegetables. I'm going to eat a piece of fruit, whatever. Those little decisions add up. A great book on that is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I love that book because it talks about 1 or 2 degrees of change over the course of thousands of miles is thousands of miles different in the place you end up. And so I'd say find those little things that you can do better. And don't be afraid to take a little risk in investing in a good business partner like Invo that can really, really help you change the trajectory of how you interact with customers and put the power back in their hands.
That was good. And he even threw a plug in at the end. That was unsolicited.
Unsolicited.
Yeah, it's the good stuff. Awesome. Ryan, did you have anything else today?
I don't think so. Really good conversation. I think it definitely challenges just us in this industry to focus on the customer. I think that's super easy to get lost on us and to kind of I really like your analogy about the couches, just doing your own thing, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And your customers might be in your branch saying, these are ugly couches, and you're just not paying attention. So, no, I just think that that's such a valuable mindset to have specifically in this industry.
That's good. Well, Brett, if people want to get to know you, connect with you, or find out more about Tower Community Bank, where can they go?
Yeah, you can email me anytime. My email is brett.hollenbeck@towercommunitybank.com. I'll make sure that I spell that out for Ryan so that he can add that in the show notes because it's a monster of an email. So that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. I'm also on social if you want to see me paddleboarding, but that's probably not super interesting. So I'm on Instagram as well. You can just look up Brett Hollenbeck. You'll find me. Those are probably the 2 places where I live and breathe the most, but I don't spend a lot of time on social. So I rarely post, but I'm on there.
Well, he's about to blow up now, so we're gonna put all
Thank
this,
you guys for
put all the ways
thousands
to
of
contact
followers.
you and reach out to. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, tens and tens of views.
I'll send my thank you when I get my blue check.
Yeah,
I guess you can buy yours now though. So
that's right.
You
that's right. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
I love it. I love it,
guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well, Brett, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Really
we appreciate your time.
Yeah,
awesome, man. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Bye, guys.
Man, it was so good to have Brett on with us today. What a great opportunity to kick off this podcast with what I think is probably one of the biggest mover and shakers in the community banking space. Ryan, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he gave some awesome insight. I thought just some things I just kind of took away from it. He talked about monetizing digital banking, kind of talking about what that looks like for Tower. And I think it's interesting because I think we can sometimes get lost in the idea that you have to choose between the customer experience or being efficient. And obviously that's something that Invo cares deeply about, is giving our clients the opportunity to give their customer a better experience, like the best experience we can possibly give them, but while making it easier on the staff, while adding and making the efficiency of their branches like that much better. So I thought that was a really important thing that he kind of took note of.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And the way that Tower is going about it is unique. And
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to reflect on strategies all over the country in the credit union space, large to mid-size cap, financial institutions, community banks of all sizes. And this is the first time I've really heard somebody put that front and center in a strategic plan of deploying a strategy that is emphasizing the things you just mentioned, but also really looking into what are some things we can do to better serve customers that could generate revenue and increase bottom line, how to or impact the bottom line. And so that creates an opportunity for a more realistic and more impactful ROI that far exceeds just implementing something for changing strategies or changing technology experiences, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And I liked what he talked about. I think at one point he said, speaking from the customer's perspective, he said, "Let me choose." I like that a lot too. I think with at least a modern customer, they're looking for those choices. They don't want to be maybe given like one option. And he had a lot of great like analogies talking about the ugly couches. We might be looking at customers that are saying, "Well, you're not giving me a choice. You're giving me this ugly couch, and I don't want an ugly couch." So I think that's something that's super important for banks and credit unions to really push into. Is like he talks so much about just listening and like actually listening to his customers, and that really does come down to if you listen to your customers, they want those choices. They want the ability to decide for themselves how they bank, where they have access to their bank. So I really like that as well. That was great.
Yeah, man, and this makes for bad radio, but I'm putting my hands up to the side of my face because it's so easy to get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Right? So you get so focused on our primary objective is to open an account. Our primary objective is to grow loans under $25,000. Our primary goal is to chase new commercial business and forget that there is a lot of steps from A to Z that you need to accomplish. And you can impact every single one of those with how you handle the interaction, how you present the interaction, make it easier, but then also making it personal. And just because technology enters the picture doesn't mean you push the customer away or you start to deviate down two different paths for choice, like you said. I think there's a way to do both and letting the customer choose to do it the way they want to do it and be able to be open to doing something different is going to be what really wins the day in the long run.
And that plays into, he talked about the making it easy and obvious. That plays like right into it. If you make your user experience, if it's incredibly easy to access where a customer needs to go, if it's obvious what they need to be looking for, that's going to make that choice that much easier. If they go into let's just say they're on your website or they're walking into your branch, if it's hard for them to find where they need to go, even if you have a lot of choices, it's not going to matter. They're not going to know where to go. And obviously, he talked about being a banking outsider. I jokingly call myself an alien in our workspace because I'm the creative manager, right? So this idea of the user experience, the UX, is something that I know is incredibly important. Or if you put in front of a customer, in front of a member, options that are difficult to navigate. If you have a video banking page that's difficult to find where you need to go, or even on your website, if it's just not clear and obvious where a customer needs to go if they want to apply for a loan or if they want to open a new account, these digital tools are great, but they have to be accessible. So I love that easy and obvious. It's just not making the customer do the extra legwork. Like that's our job, to do that extra legwork to make it that much easier for them to find it. So I loved that. That was probably my favorite quote from our time with Brett. I think that was super impactful, an easy thing to remember, right? Just make it easy, make it obvious. I liked that a lot.
Oh man, yeah. I don't have much to add to that because it also resonated the most with me. And I think about if you were to put a title or even a motto on all of the strategies that he shared, it all falls back to how do we make things easier and how do we make them obvious. Obvious to me in that revelation is accessible, easy to find, simple to navigate. I go to your website. How can I find where I need to go within 5 seconds? If I walk into the front doors of your branch lobby, how can I find the resource I need in 5 seconds? Make it easy for me to go through the process, make it obvious for me to find out where the heck I got to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it wraps back around to that at the very beginning of this, we talked about that monetizing banking or digital banking. And we think that there's like a dichotomy between staff efficiency, branch efficiency, and like the user experience. When in reality, it's a positive cycle. That if you are, consider the customer service, maybe legwork, or the time that your agents are spending with customers when they're trying to figure out something that you have in your digital tools. You're saying, why I clicked on this, I thought it was going to go here. I used your chatbot and it didn't take me where it needed to go. That eliminates that. If you can make things easy and obvious, then not only is it a better user experience, not only are they going to want to interact with your digital tools more, they're also not going to have to call an agent. They're not going to have to talk to someone that is doing other things, maybe talking to another person. So I think it's all just this sort of, you use this word a lot, this ecosystem that really works together. So were there anything else that you kind of took away from it, or that you thought stood out from what he was talking about?
Yeah, I think my final thought would just be the whole strategy of this Momentum by Tower brand that they're launching. And I think this is an opportunity for Brett to bring, like you said, his outside alien experience in to impact Tower, but then also show other financial institutions what's possible. And this Momentum by Tower brand is about doing banking differently, not changing the way that we do banking, but the manner in which you conduct the banking experience. In this virtual branch, this virtual bank that they're building out, I really think it's what's going to help to take a financial institution that's really rooted in this, the area of Tennessee that they're located in, the markets that they serve, and help them to reach a bigger audience while also being more relevant to the audience they're serving, and then reach these commercial customers that they're wanting to go after as well. So I'm really excited to see that. We'll make sure we share that information out so they can go find out. Everyone that's here today listening and watching can find out more about Momentum. We'll put some of that detail in there. But I think for me, that was, I walked away really the most excited about to see what's going to happen 12 months from now with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll make sure to put, for all insiders out there, we'll make sure to put all these links out. There were so many things mentioned in the podcast, and books and authors and all sorts of stuff. We'll make sure to put that in the description. Going forward, I think that's all the time we have. I don't know if we have anything else to add. Make sure to subscribe to us wherever you're getting your podcasts. If you're going to watch us on YouTube or on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe to that and sign up for our next Invo Insider event. So that's where a lot of this content is going to be going. You can see a lot of this content on your next Invo Insider, but also with the chance to win prizes. Our next one is going to be on February 1st, I believe. Mm-hmm. So it's right around the corner. We have one every single month. And if you actually go to our website and register as an insider, which is a special sort of promotional sort of VIP program that we have, you'll get a gift pack for free. You'll have access to exclusive content in the future and exclusive gifts in the future, prizes in the future as well. So with every insider that you attend on a monthly basis, you'll just add another notch to that chain and get to earn more stuff. So until then, if you don't have anything else to add, or are we good to wrap this up?
Man, I think it's good. What a fun time. I'm glad that Brett was able to join us. Glad that you were able to join us, Ryan. And so I guess last thing we have to say before we go is until next time.
Viva la Invo.
Viva la Invo.
Viva la Invo.